Amazing. So we are changing gears, moving on to tech for good. So who's familiar with the industry or phrase health tech? Anyone heard of health tech before? We've got one person in the back. Wow. So this industry, we've got one person here as well. This industry is absolutely booming. I've got a friend, he's got a company. I grew up with him in South. Multi-million-pound company. They've raised a lot of investment, and especially ever since COVID, because when it comes to healthcare, a lot of it, since COVID, essentially, they're trying to make it virtual and make it available on demand or bring it as close to you as possible. So our next speaker, Amma, is the head of product development at 52 North Health. If you've never heard of them, they're all about creating affordable, cutting-edge tech to bring healthcare closer to patients. She leads the company's engineering teams and develops a product called NeutroCheck, wow, which is a low-cost portable device that allows cancer patients, essentially, that are at risk of life-threatening medical emergencies to be identified. So she's also a multi-award-winning engineer. We've got another multi-award-winning. And she was named 2022 Young Woman Engineer of the Year by the IET, which is one of the sponsors for today. And she also holds a PhD in medical and biological engineering from the University of Leeds. I need to go to Leeds. I've got some family there. I've been avoiding them. We'll get there. But before that, she also studied biomedical engineering at Nottingham. Fun fact, I was actually considering it, but I did mechanical engineering instead. I like prosthetics and everything, but I'll get that at some point. You never know. I can still do a career switch. So she's here to tell you a little bit more about Tech for Good and her story into product development. So please welcome me in joining Dr. Amma. Cool.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this has been amazing. I love these guys. We see each other. This engineering community is so small, and those stories are so impactful. They're so familiar, and you'll hear quite similar things that I've got to talk about as well, which kind of sets to me as I was sat there listening that this is actually really important stuff that we found in our lives and through our journeys that we really want to share with you. So hopefully we can tell you something really cool. Okay, so the start of my story. And this is really important to me because I've moved around a lot. I was born in East London. We lived in Ghana for a little bit because that's where we're from. We came back. But the reason this is such an important part of my story is that it actually alienated me quite a lot. When we came back, you know, I was that child that used to say sneakers instead of trainers. I'd say Arabic, and they'd be like, no, it's Arabic. And I used to get teased a lot because I spoke differently. I had different perspectives. I didn't know the cartoons that they were watching. I had nothing. I knew nothing about them. I also didn't have like friends that I'd grown up from like childhood and that you could go back to. My family was all over the place and actually can make it quite difficult. But I think that the thing here for me was I had an interest. And while that was difficult, that was one of the things that honed me into what I wanted to do. You know, my mum's a nurse. She practiced here, but also in Ghana as well. And we used to have a pharmacy shop where people would come to us and, you know, they'd come and tell us what was wrong with them, and we'd prescribe them a little drug. I mean, I was a child, so I sat in the back, but I'd see it, you know. And I thought that was what I wanted to do. I thought my thing for the world is people. I wanted to make their health better. I wanted to help people be better versions of themselves, improve their health, that kind of thing. So what do you reckon I wanted to be, if that's what my focus was? Who wants to take a big guess? Doctor. The usual, you know. I had no idea about engineering. Similarly, I knew nobody. There was no engineers that I knew had seen. I had a couple of uncles and stuff who were doctors, but no engineers, nothing about that. But the one thing that I knew and that I loved was science and maths, the usual, you know. Maths was my saving grace when all other subjects failed me. Math was there for me. You know, my A-levels, I had A, B, C. Maths was A, and the rest of it I was just like, yeah, it's okay. Maths was there for me. But that really was the thing. And part through the story, I've sort of like really just said the key things that I really want to tell you. Like for me, my first message for you, and I know Mo and Christina talked about this, is find an interest, a compass, you know, something that drives you. Is it motorsport? Is it aerospace? For me, it was people, their health, you know, global health. I'd lived in Ghana, I'd seen malaria, cholera, all the things, you know, and I'd said to myself, this is what I want to do for the world. What I did not realize is that I could do that through engineering, because I thought I wanted to be a doctor, you know. But who knows the kind of engineering that merges with medicine? Biomedical engineering. So bioengineering, biomedical engineering, medical engineering, they're all the same thing. And I had no idea about this. I did my sixth form in North London. I grew up near where you came from, Mo. But we'd applied to do a taster course. I'd gone to Queen Mary's University, and I'd applied to go and do one in medicine, because, I mean, throughout this whole journey, I was still going to be a doctor, you know. My mum was going to give me that doctor whatever way I wanted it. And then they put me on the wrong one. So I get there, and they're leading us to the engineering department, and I'm thinking, maybe they just needed the lab space, you know? Like, we're still going to the medicine one. And then we get there, and it's biomedical materials engineering. And so we walk into this lab, it smells of grease, there's like spanners and stuff all over the desk, you know? It's like all these things. And then they start to show us prosthesis. So they showed us like a hip replacement, what's called a fracture fixation, which is if you broke a bone. If any of you have broken a bone before, they might put like some metallic pins in your arm or leg to try and get the bones to realign as they heal. And so they showed us all these things, and they were like, oh, you know, these are the things that we use to improve people's health. And I was just thinking, okay, yeah, all right, I could do the people thing another way. So I came back and I applied to do biomedical materials engineering. And this is very important that you remember that I did not start as a medical engineer. I started as a materials engineer. Because again, I knew nothing, you know. I had an interest and I found a direction, but I had no guidance. And that's why I think days like today, events like this, you know, is so important, because it exposes you to loads of different avenues of engineering. And we have loads of it. You've seen various versions of just even in aerospace, you know, and in Tech for Good, you're going to hear loads more about it. And so I started in a direction, but that was not necessarily where I wanted to end up. And so my next message for you is, in addition to finding, you know, what you love and finding a career or vocation out of it, be proactive, you know. That was it for me. Once I entered the field, I realized that actually the thing that I really wanted to do was, I wanted to take somebody's condition or a problem they were having and create a solution for it. The materials that I was doing at the time was very much in, so Ella's in here somewhere. Ella's a materials engineer, and she's like full speed ahead at the like forefront of innovation in like automotive. The type of materials that I started it was in health, which is a little bit different. Because generally materials go inside the body, there's a long way before you can get a new thing out. You know, if you want to try new materials in medicine, it can take quite a lot of time, because essentially you don't want to just try a new thing and put it in somebody. We could kill them. So that was a very slow area, and I wanted to go into an area where I could take an issue and make a device or a solution and then see somebody's health improve. But I only figured that out after I started. So there were loads of false starts for me, and I think that's another message for you. You know, it doesn't matter if you have false starts, as long as you're learning, as long as you're taking the opportunities and crafting your career. Be proactive. Don't be afraid. It's your life. This thing is so important to me, because no one's going to live it for you. No one's going to be proactive for you. They're going to make all the solutions around. They're going to give you opportunities like today, but they're not going to do it for you. I ended up having to, these guys were talking about earlier, you know, messaging people, reaching out to them. My lecturers really, really were tired of me. Like everywhere I went, whether it was in my career or in any organization, I would reach out to people, you know, what are you doing? What is it that you're doing? You're in medical engineering, but you do something different from me. How is that working? What is that like? You need to do that and remember to live your life with that interest that you've already got. You know, you're chartering your own path, and the only way to do that is to ask questions and to get the answers. And this is also important. Please don't be afraid to be the first. I had nobody who did engineering. My dad is the one that actually taught me bits and bobs about like fixing things. We'd like fix the car, he'd take me along, you know. But still we had no idea that was an engineering trade that I could even mix with medicine. But don't be afraid to be the first. And, you know, it's important that you see role models and go after them, you know, speak to them, learn from them, take their experience. But if there's nobody there, if you can't see it, just go ahead and be it anyway, because that lighthouse that we were talking about, Mo, you become that lighthouse that other people start to follow. And so just make sure that you know that you can be what you want to be. I mean, engineering is so vast, it's so broad. Think big, you know. Do you want to be the person that takes the first person to some obscure planet somewhere that we've never been to? Let's do it, you know. Do you want to create the new product that nobody's ever thought about? Let's do it. That's why engineering is so cool. So please don't be afraid to be the first. Now, part of my story comes in false starts, but it also comes in lots of failures. And I think for me, it was so important that I talk about this because we don't talk enough about the fact that just because maybe last year I won Young Woman Engineer of the Year means that I never actually failed like face down flat and had to pick myself up again, you know? And that's really important because you should make sure that you're not defined by that. I struggled with this and it took me many, many years. How many people know how long it generally takes to do a PhD? 3 to 4 years. How long do you reckon it took me to do my PhD? Thank you. That's a really accurate number. It took me 8 whole years because after my 3 years, I failed flat. They would not pass my Viva. I went into my Viva, sat there for about 4.5 hours or so, where they grilled me to within an inch of my life. I came out wanting to like just fall down flat, and they said, "You don't have enough here. We can't give it to you." And imagine putting all that effort in and being told that you're not good enough. You know, that can be really hard, and it can actually define you if you go through a really big setback. It doesn't matter what that setback is. A setback is a setback, whatever it is, and it's really important that you don't get discouraged or defined by it, because actually failure is part of the journey. It may not be a complete face-down flat failure, but it might be another kind of stumbling block in your journey, and you just need to understand. So I found this image that I thought was really pertinent because it says, lots of people think that there are 2 ways. One is success, one is failure. But actually, to get to final success, you probably will meander a little bit, and that's still fine. And so when I did my Viva, I was pregnant. They didn't know this because I was like still like walking around, whatever. But the fact, you know, I wasn't showing. But the next photo there is of my daughter. And the reason it's so important to me that she was wearing my graduation cap and cape is because it took as long as she was alive for me to graduate. It was so long. It took 4 years of my life. When I finished work, you know, most of the time when you finish your PhD, depending on how early you finish, you may go in and start working if you haven't finished writing up. And that's exactly what I did. I needed money. I needed to keep moving. So I'd gone and started working. So I was working a full-time job. I was pregnant. I had a baby. And I was finishing up my PhD. In fact, I was redoing a significant portion of that. And I think it's important to say that sometimes you will go through trials and tribulations. You know, it might be hard. You might be juggling a few more than you probably anticipated. You might think that it's actually just going to be a straight road, and it isn't always. So it took me a whole 4 years to grow that human before I could actually put a cape on her. But that was part of that story, and I think it will be good if you remember that as well. Now, this bit is actually, it runs through my whole story, you know. We were talking earlier about people attending events like this, talking to people, reaching out beyond yourself. Similar to what Christina said, during my undergrad, I did not know a lot. I'd already said that I didn't know about engineering. I started this program, but also I just wanted to pass, you know? Sometimes that's all you really just want to do. You just want to head down and pass. But once you've passed, you need to think about the next thing, you know? And also, we've talked about the fact that sometimes you might be on a journey that you really want to meander. Well, how are you going to know that there is another opportunity for you if you don't explore what's out there? So take advantage of events like this. There are loads of organizations, RS have them, Motives have them, the IET, the IMechE, which is the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, loads of different institutions. They are actually actively trying to help people. It's just we don't know they're there. So now that you know, just have a look, you know, search, maybe vary your interest or what you want to do as an apprenticeship. I wanted to do an apprenticeship when I was at university. Once I realized that I wanted to move away from materials, there was none. Back then, there weren't that many, and they didn't want to take girls. So I really, I approached quite a few of them, and they're just like, lots of mumbling and stuff, you know. But having that support network allowed me to transcend that a little bit. I did placements instead. I went and worked with companies, internships, a lot, because actually that is what you want to do, get the experience and the exposure to lots of different bits, so that you know what's out there. So when you're making a decision, it is quite an informed decision. And it's fine if that informed decision today is not what you want to do in 10 years. Because, I mean, you would find that I started off working on hip replacements. And then I went and worked in laparoscopic devices, which is like keyhole surgery things, right? So we're moving from cutting people open to doing them through little holes so that they can recover quicker. I've worked in respiratory devices. Now I work in cancer care, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But that's really what I wanted to say. One of my biggest career moves and what I do now is moving from being a senior engineer in a company to being head of a department in another company, right? And that only happened after I found a mentor. I'd been looking around. I'd been saying to myself, I just want somebody to coach me. I just want somebody to hear me and say, you're doing this correct, you're not doing this right, have you considered this? And I couldn't find anybody. And then eventually I'd sort of message loads of people, the usual, proactive. And then I met a woman who decided to take me on. And she said, well, if you don't think you're learning in your current role or you're not growing as fast, why don't you leave? And I was just like, leave? Huh? What? And so I did. And I left that and got a really high promotion. But then at this new place, I also have a lot of support. So that support network, the mentorship, the coaching. And it's through that role, through the work that I'm doing now, that the Young Women Engineer Award came through, the Top 50 Women in Engineering Award, the Top 21 Award came through, you know. It's having that network. If you have that around you, people who actually believe in you, want to prop you up, that can go a really long way. So I would say that definitely please take advantage of them. Whether it's through an apprenticeship or a university program or even outside in your community, find places where you can meet other people. Do it safely, but find people so that you've got a community around you for the journey that you want to be on. So this is my story, but I thought that I'd give you a very quick, 1 minute, choose a couple of things on this slide. These are some projects that I've worked on. If anybody can guess, there are no numbers, but if you can pick any of them, what do you reckon they are? Who wants to go first? Yeah? Oh, yeah. It's got a band there, but it's actually an artificial arm. It's like a bionic arm. Yeah.
Are you printing ears or growing ears?
Printing ears, yeah. So it's not printing ears. Say that again. Printing ears, yeah. Yeah. So artificial tissue engineering. So you can take a stem cell and you create a scaffold of what the shape it needs to grow into, and then you lace it with the cells, and it will grow into that shape. That was something I did during my master's, but something like that. Last one, because George is about to come up. Who wants to go one last one? Say that. Diabetes, yes. So sort of it's called a micro pump. So people on diabetes, if they need to be given insulin on a regular, they attach that to them and it gradually gives it to them. But I have had loads of fun, and I think actually Tech for Good, medical engineering, it's an area where you can really help. As you can see, there's a whole variation of things that you can do. And so if you're interested in the area, come talk to me later.